The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. A man going on a journey called in his servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to a third 1, to each according to his abilities. Then he went away. Immediately, the one who received 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5. Likewise, the one who received 2 made another 2. But the man who received 1 went off and dug a hole in the ground and buried his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came back and settled accounts with them. The one who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing the additional 5. He said, "Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I've made 5 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you were faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come, share in your master's joy." Then the one who received 2 talents also came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I made 2 more." His master said to him, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Since you are faithful in small matters, I will give you great responsibilities. Come share your master's joy." Then the one who had received 1 talent came forward and said, "Master, I knew you were a demanding person, harvesting where you did not plant and gathering where you did not scatter. So out of fear, I went off and buried your talent in the ground. Here it is back." His master said to him in reply, "You wicked and lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I did not plant and gather where I did not scatter. Should you not then have put my money in the bank so that I could have got back with interest on my return? Now then, take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10. For everyone who has, more will be given, and he will grow rich. For the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And throw this useless servant into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Today we celebrate the 33rd Sunday in Ordinary Time, and we're drawing closer to the end of our liturgical year. Last week we heard about the 5 wise and the 5 foolish maids. Next week we're going to hear about the sheep and the goats. And today we hear the parable of the talents. What these parables have in common is they talk about the end of time, the second coming, and also judgment. When I was younger, I went to work for a small company, and I had to go see the president and explain to the president that we had a problem. The president was a very dynamic man and stood up out of his chair, walked around his desk, and he told me, "Son, we do not ever have any problems. All we have are opportunities." So today, I'd like to tell you a story of opportunity. I'd like to tell you about grace. There was this child, and she'd previously been adopted by a family, and they had the best of intentions, but they never quite integrated this child into their family. And after a couple of rough years, they dissolved the adoption. Thankfully, another family welcomed this 8-year-old child into their family. For one reason or another, the adopted child's previous family vacationed at Disney World, and they took their biological children with them, but they left their adopted daughter behind with a friend. At least in the daughter's mind, this happened because she did something wrong that would preclude her to a trip to the Magic Kingdom. Upon finding this out, the new parents made plans to take this child to Disney World for their next vacation. What the parents didn't expect was the prospect of visiting this dream world would produce a stream of downright horrible behavior from this new child of theirs. And as days moved closer, she got even worse. Her parents pulled her to their laps to talk about her latest escapade, and she said, "I know what you're going to do. You're not going to take me to Disney World, are you?" As little as she was, she understood that she couldn't earn her way into the magic kingdom. In her mind, she had tried before, and she'd failed the test. Her parents looked at her and said, "Is this trip something we're doing for the family?" She looked at them, her eyes welled up with tears, and she said, "Yes." And then they asked her, "Are you part of this family?" She nodded her head and she said, "Yes." Then the parents said, "It's settled. You're going with us." The family headed to Disney World on the day promised. In the hotel room that evening, a completely different child was there. She was exhausted, she was overwhelmed, and a little preoccupied. But her month-long tirade of bad behavior, it had faded. When bedtime rolled around, the parents prayed with her and held her, and they asked her, "How was your first day at Disneyland?" She closed her eyes. She snuggled into the stuffed Minnie Mouse they had bought her, and after a few minutes, she opened her eyes ever so slightly and said, "I finally got to go to Disney World, but it's not because I was good. It's because I'm yours." It's not because I was good, because I'm yours. In a nutshell, that's the message of God's grace. We receive grace not because we've earned it. We receive God's grace because we are His. Grace is what was given to each of the three servants today. Grace, we often hear the word. Grace, we often use the word. But do we truly know what grace is in our lives? And do we truly know how grace can change the world? Actual grace is like these little pokes. They're like these little prods. They're like these little nudges that come from God. These pokes, these prods, these nudges, can take many different forms. And they come to us from different people, from different places, and from different things. Actual grace, it can come in the form of a loved one that reminds us to go to church, that reminds us to go to confession. Grace can come in the form of your parents, be they alive or be they deceased, and part of the community of saints that remind you that you are loved. It could be a friend telling you a truth about yourself that no one else would dare mention. It could come in the form of a catastrophic event that will bring you to your knees in front of God, when in the past you wouldn't even have given God a second thought. It could come in the promptings of your own conscience when you're confronted with your own sins. It might be a person you spoke to, a book that you read that's compelled you in the direction of love, in the direction of mercy, or in the direction of justice. It could be the feeling that you get when you experience a beautiful fall day today, like we're having. It could be just about anything that can move you closer to God. The talents that the three servants were given, they weren't so much a monetary gift or personal capacities. What it is, rather, is a share in the grace of God, a participation in God's divine love. The problem with this perceived useless servant who buried his talent is not that he was an ineffective servant, but that he fundamentally misunderstood the nature of what he'd been given. Grace, received as a pure gift, is meant to be given to others as a pure gift. Nothing should ever separate us from the grace of God. But buried into the ground, that is to say, clinging to grace as solely one's own possession, such a talent given to us by God will eventually fade. It will dissipate. Give what you receive, and it will be multiplied, just like the fishes and the loaves. This is why the Master's seemingly harsh words should not be read as a punishment of an angry God, but rather as an expression of spiritual physics. Her grace will grow in you only in as much as you give it to others. Actual grace, it can be acted upon, can be ignored. But the good news is there's always going to be another poke, there's always going to be another prod, and there's always going to be another nudge coming around soon, because I'm here to tell you that God never, ever abandons you. When we love one another, we pass on God's life to others. Having been blessed, we can bless others. Having been forgiven, we can forgive others. Having been strengthened, we can share our strength. Grace is not meant to be stored, it's not meant to be hoarded, and it's not meant to be buried. It's meant to touch others' lives. When you move through your life and it's buoyed by God's grace, it can spill over into the lives of your spouses, to the lives of your children, and all those whose lives you participate in. Grace, it is truly the gift that keeps giving. Grace is God's goodness, and it comes looking for you in the times of abundance. Grace is God's goodness that's also going to come to you in the times of anger and resentment, when that's all you have to give to God. Grace, it's a one-way love that calls you into his kingdom. Give away grace, and I'm here to tell you, your own life will be enhanced. That's what the moral life is all about. The moral life is the joyful response to God's grace. My brothers and sisters, when the Master comes, and he will come, he will want to know what we did to further the compassion, the humility, the freedom, and the mercy and the love he entrusted to us. Blessed are those who will place an abundance of grace back into his own hands.